Everyone, thank you for coming to this event. We have been proposing a declaration on diversity for quite some time. We think it's even more important in this time of transition, where we know the world is changing, it's becoming multipolar, multilateral, and perhaps pluralistic to a great extent. And in times of transitions, countries and powers often tend to draw back, and minorities and diversity tends to suffer. But we hope this transition period will be more peaceful, will be more enlightening. After all, we've had the United Nations now since 1948. There's a lot of experience in the world, a lot of international bodies, and we don't see any reason why this period of transition cannot be peaceful as opposed to other periods of transition in the world. So I have some very eminent speakers. We are fortunate to have Professor Nicholas Leverett, who is the Special Rapporteur on Minorities. Professor Leverett is a member of the linguistic minority. He's a doctorate in international law and a full professor at the University of Geneva. He has extensive experience in minority rights, and I've had discussions with him, and I'm really impressed with his very open mind. His current mandate focuses on protecting and promoting the rights of national, ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities worldwide through research, advice, and country visits, and I hope he will be one of the greatest assets during this period of transition. Professor Leverett.
Thank you very much. And first, thank you for the invitation. I much appreciate. I think, as you hinted, we are living a very special period, not very enthusiastic period. We see more destruction of what we know than bricks being laid down for future building or rebuilding of an international community. And it is a reason to worry, but it's also a reason to start thinking of what will come next. And in that respect, I think this initiative is timely, even though, as you say, you've been pushing this idea for some time. But what I find most interesting in the concept of a universal declaration on diversity is the link between universality and diversity. Because currently, I think universality as we know it is biased, has been built on, for historical reason, on Western values. And I think universality should not be forgotten. I think it's important, but it has to be rebuilt. It has to be rebuilt precisely based on this diversity of culture, diversity of practice, diversity of value, diversity of experience, and not only the experience of one part of humanity, which still has its place, but shall not, again, be the dominant group to shape this universal concept. So I really think that the important part is not only diversity, but it's a link between diversity and universality. That being said, naturally, the question will come on which diversity. Actually, you certainly know there exists a Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity that was adopted by UNESCO in 2001. And then they had, a few years later, in 2005, a Convention on the Protection and Promotion of Diversity of Cultural Expression. And it is interesting to see how moving from the very broad and ambitious content of the declaration. When we move to a convention, naturally, you have negotiation, you have states saying, oh, that may be difficult to implement, or we want an exception here and there, and then you narrow the scope. So I think it's better for the time being to work on a declaration which can be broader. We've seen the same thing with human rights in general. We know we have the 48th Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and then the international community was not able to transform it in one single convention. We needed to have two, and then it's full of gaps, so we need to add convention and so on, and we have multiplication of norms, of regime, and naturally it offers a degree of protection. We should think very carefully about preserving what can be preserved, but on the other hand, we have such a division of context, norms, and regime that it may not be so efficient. So in that respect, I really think the time is welcome to think about a universal declaration on diversity. Now, what is meant by diversity? Why is diversity important? I think, I have my own conviction about that. And we see, for example, in the realm of biology, that biodiversity is a necessity for survival of life as we know it on this planet. And I guess for the survival of our societies, their culture, their lifestyle, the diversity is a necessity. As for biology, for human societies, diversity is a necessity. If we move towards single parameter society, if I may so, then we will lose creativity. We will lose capacity to develop, capacity to face unexpected event. Resilience is certainly also an important context that has to be taken into account while working on this declaration, because right now we've pushed the situation to a point where we will have to adapt to non-chosen but very pressing crisis that will force humanity to find new solutions and hopefully to find them together based on this diversity. And then come, I think, two practical questions, which are also extremely important. How to draft such a universal declaration. And in my view, the process is probably as important as the outcome. Somehow, great if there is a universal declaration that can be adopted, shared by most, hopefully all, but at least most. But what is really important is how we get there, how there is a mobilization to reflect and to work on rebuilding this universality, not based on the existing value only, but on diversity. So I think it will be important to think about this process, and then leading to adoption, how and by whom shall it be adopted? Shall it go in the end through interstate organization like the UN? But we know the UN is in a difficult situation now, and maybe in 3 years' time it will be very different from now. Or shall we also try to invent another type of process which would allow empowerment of populations, of cultural groups, of communities, so that it is not only adopted by state representative, but it is really something which has been produced and accepted, adopted by these communities. So I guess at this time, there are more questions than answers, which is good. Again, I think what is important is this process, that it should start. And the real urgent question is how to start the process so that it interests enough people and takes a dynamic that would lead towards at least a serious draft and eventually an adoption. So now the real question is how to find a spark to really raise interest and to start a process. So I think for the time being, I have no more insight to give on this idea of a universal declaration on diversity, but you can count on my support to work on it.
Thank you very much, Professor Labret. And I think having your support and your ideas in it and your expertise in it is very, very valuable, because, you know, diversity does in the end deal a lot with minorities. And what we say is, if the majority can be made, or can be through policies by the states can be made to accept diversity, then the tensions within countries would go away. Perhaps there'd be there'd be less chance of discrimination, etc. So let me invite the second speaker, Ms. Kulkiran Jagdev. She's a distinguished advocate for global peace and justice, bringing the wisdom of Gursikhi, Sikhism, as many people know, to the international stage. As a key representative at the United Nations, she challenges the status quo, advancing innovative solutions to some of today's most critical global issues. With a deep commitment to social justice, Ms. Jagdev integrates core principles such as Chardi Kala, which means always look on the positive side, and Seva, which is voluntary work without ever expecting anything in return, into her work, focusing on fostering sustainable and inclusive solutions. Her leadership and expertise have made a significant impact, particularly in areas related to human rights, interfaith dialogue, global development, and climate issues.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Firstly, sorry.
Once more.
Yep. Are we on? Yep. Thank you. Firstly, it definitely is an honor to speak on a platform with such distinguished speakers, and I think Professor Levra opened it up so perfectly. As someone trained in anthropology, I approach diversity not just as a social issue, but as a profound reality of human and natural life. And in a world undergoing rapid global transition, our ability to protect and nurture diversity has never been more critical to our collective survival. We are witnessing challenges that transcend borders: climate refugees seeking new homes, economic upheaval displacing communities, and digital transformation reshaping how we work and interact. In this context, societies that embrace diversity are proving more resilient, innovative, and stable than those that retreat into exclusion. Diversity can be approached in two broad ways. The first approach comes from a history of exclusion, where one group has dominated the political and social order in a region and is now coming to terms with concepts of equal rights, tolerance, and engagement with multiple different communities. The second approach exists where there's a long history of accepting diversity in all its forms, but issues of nationalism, nationalism complicate this acceptance and require new thinking and new commitments. In both cases, we must accept that diversity is not an obstacle, but a natural and essential condition of human society. Nature thrives on diversity. In species, ecosystems, genetics, diversity is fundamental to resilience. Human diversity, therefore, is no different. It encompasses our language, beliefs, identities, philosophies, worldviews, and ways of life. In the Sikh worldview, this is deeply understood. We believe that all creation originates from one source. Differences are real, but they are also expressions of the same oneness. To discriminate against another is, in essence, to deny that oneness. In our ways of understanding, the world are also part of human creative diversity. How we see the world, how we construct our understanding of knowledge, and how we act on it are all part of human creativity. If we understand that our differences are simply diverse manifestations of the same one source, we can learn to accept them rather than build invisible walls and sometimes physical and legal ones. What we need is a change of attitude. Law is necessary and extremely important for addressing discrimination, but to truly eliminate discrimination and prejudice, we must also change minds and hearts. A declaration on diversity can be an instrument that encourages states and institutions to enact policies that make people comfortable with diversity and differences, policies that promote acceptance. This understanding extends to gender. From ancient misogyny to modern rights-based frameworks, society has traveled far, and yet we still need treaties, quotas, legislations to affirm women's rights. Why? Because our attitudes have not fully caught up with our laws. Would it be a better world if equality was instinctive and not enforced? I believe society needs to think of our diversity, even in the gender field, as natural, without second-guessing what nature intended. Why not start thinking that nature is neither dogmatic nor fanatical? Nature's diverse. Nature did not assign fixed roles. There are women who are strong, who lead, who innovate, who govern. If this could be society's default thinking, then the scope for discrimination would be much smaller and legal enforcement would be less necessary. It will be a great day when there's no need for a special treaty for women. It will be a great day when women are respected and have dignity without requiring legal enforcement. In the Sikh worldview, our Guru took a radical step that led to considerable change in attitudes. Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhi, said, "So kyo manda akhiye jit jamme raja," which translates to, "Why do you slander women? From her the kings are born." This was not just spiritual insight, it was a social revolution. Before colonialism, Sikh women enjoyed great freedom. Women commanded armies, led communities, and enjoyed equal dignity. Colonialism trampled on the dignity and respect Sikh women enjoyed. It trampled on these diverse traditions, imposing narrow hierarchical systems that persist today. The task of decolonizing our minds includes reclaiming this appreciation for diversity. The Sikhs have recovered significantly. We work to remove barriers and discrimination and to change attitudes rather than getting caught up in the politics of equality in numbers. But laws alone cannot transform societies. We must change mindsets. We must dismantle the idea that equality is unnatural. When society insists on narrowly defining roles by gender, religion, caste, race, or origin, it creates exclusion. And in times of global upheaval, exclusion breeds instability. That's why we support a declaration on diversity. A declaration on diversity that will make people less dogmatic about their opinions and more accepting of the diversity that nature has created. By enacting policies and programs that encourage acceptance of diversity in all its forms without generalizations, we believe states can go far in changing attitudes. We believe that legal instruments and compliance work best when there is also change in attitudes among the general public. By changing minds, we can achieve much. In today's world, this is best accomplished through collaboration between state and civil society. Such a declaration would not replace legal instruments like the 1979 Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It would strengthen them. It could articulate shared principles rooted in cultural, ethical, and philosophical understandings of diversity. It could serve as a bridge between law and lived reality, guiding education systems, public discourse, and civic life. We propose that this declaration be based on the following principles: that diversity in all its forms, biological, cultural, gender-based, linguistic, ideological, is natural and essential. That acceptance must go beyond tolerance and be rooted in dignity and mutual respect. That peace, development, and democracy are impossible without inclusive systems, and that civil society, states, and communities must work together to transform public attitudes. Already, there are examples around the world where inclusive policies have helped women and minorities thrive without needing to constantly prove their worth. These stories must be amplified. We believe that now is the time for bold, values-driven action. In this moment of global transition, let us shape a future where difference is not a source of fear, but a foundation for peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The champion for our Declaration on Diversity. I'm going to ask the next speaker, Ms. Nora Lucia Caro Cabanillas. I hope I got the name right. Currently, she's pursuing a master's in international and development studies with a focus on environment and sustainability at the Geneva Graduate Institute. She brings over 5 years of experience working with local and international NGOs on humanitarian aid, farm animal welfare, and food sustainability. Driven by a strong commitment to ethical food production and environmental justice, Nora is dedicated to explaining her expertise to contribute towards a more sustainable, equitable, and peaceful world.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. It is a great privilege to speak before you today. And my personal contribution today will focus on how the philosophy of Buddhism can contribute to fostering diversity, not only cultural and religious diversity, but the broader human diversity that shapes our world. So yeah, as previously mentioned, I was born in Mexico, and maybe you can be asking why she will be speaking for Buddhism. But from a personal experience, for the last 7 years, I've been studying and practicing the philosophy of Buddhism, specifically Tibetan Buddhism. So I can't say I'm an expert in theory or practice of Buddhism, but I could definitely share today some of the core values that Buddhism brings about and how it aligns with the Convention on Diversity that we are speaking about today. So yeah, during this brief presentation, as I mentioned, I will share how the Buddhist philosophy can contribute to the embracement of diversity. So Buddhism is not merely a school of thought. It is a living tradition that is practiced by millions across Asia, the Himalayas, and increasingly around the world, even in countries like mine, Mexico. But beyond its geographic spread, what makes Buddhism particularly relevant in spaces like this, the United Nations, is its deep philosophical embrace of plurality, interdependence, and compassion without boundaries. So according to Buddhist philosophy, identities such as cultural, ethnic, religious, or even personal are not rigid boxes, but they are rather fluid and evolving processes. As the Buddhist teacher Geshe Tashi Tsering explained, we tend to perceive things as if they had an intrinsic existence, when in reality they don't. Just to provide an example, we tend to see a person and they appear to us as if they were existing on their own, completely independent of causes and other factors, entirely separate from the world in which they exist. And according to Buddhism, this misinterpretation of the nature of reality is the main cause of our suffering, because that ignorance likely leads us to generate attachment and aversion towards others. So as long as we hold even slightly the belief that people, nature, things, ecosystem exist in an independent and isolated way, we will continue clinging to that sense of separation. When we see ourselves as separated and isolated from the world around us, anything that reinforces this sense of identity and self will provoke attachment, and conversely, everything that threatens us will provoke aversion. So this is why a clear and profound understanding of interconnectedness is extremely important if we truly seek to develop compassion towards others and not aversion. For me personally, the understanding of how interconnected we all are is key to fostering a true sense of diversity. Because when we stop seeing others as others, we can develop a sense of unity with everyone and everything, recognizing the beauty of diversity and understanding that diversity is part of who we are. From this perspective, diversity is not a challenge to be solved, but a richness to be welcome. So in a time where polarization and identity-based conflict threaten global peace, this Buddhist wisdom offers a powerful alternative, which is the understanding that diversity is not a fragmentation, but a reflection of our mutual co-creation. And another Buddhist concept that can contribute to the value of diversity is impermanence. So in Buddhism, clinging to a permanent, isolated notion of oneself leads to suffering. Similarly, clinging to rigid, permanent cultural, national identities can lead to division and exclusion. So by understanding the impermanence of things, we can start to soften our boundaries. And from that space, a genuine openness to others emerges. So from this perspective, diversity becomes less about us and them, and more about mutual becoming, where we can coexist, inform each other, and transport together. The concept of impermanence teaches that all things are in constant change. So people, cultures, beliefs, languages, ecosystems, and identities are always changing and evolving. This concept directly challenges the fixed notion of a rigid identities. So if we truly embrace impermanence, we can appreciate that diversity is not a threat to stability, but a natural expression of life's ongoing transformation. So I know that these concepts of interconnection, impermanence sound beautiful in theory, but we often struggle with them in practice. So personally, I believe that diversity is not the problem. It's simply a reality, and everyone in this room knows that we live in a profoundly diverse world. So from my perspective, one of the main challenges to attain a world that celebrates diversity lies in this attachment we have to a rigid sense of identity and the fact that we feel threatened when the other challenges our personal belief and perspectives. Therefore, my main contribution to this event is just a gentle reminder, that from the Buddhist philosophy, if we truly wish to overcome the struggle of diversity intolerance, it may be fruitful to work on loosening those boundaries of our own self and our own identity, because in doing so, we can recognize similarities instead of differences and fully embrace and celebrate the diversity that makes our world so beautiful and rich. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very insightful proposition from a Buddhist background. And we know that Buddhism has been a very successful philosophy for thousands of years, well, at least for many centuries, in the art of coexistence. So my next speaker is Bairo Diawara from the Rencontre Africaine pour la Défense de Detroit de Home. I'm not very good at French. So is the Secretary General of the Interfaith International. He has been an NGO activist in Geneva for more than 20 years, representing the interest of African civil society, including broadcasters, parliamentarians, religious figures, and human rights defenders. He specializes in democracy and trade promotion and interfaith dialogue. He's a man of many hats. He has affiliations with African delegations and civil society in New York, Geneva, and on the continent, including special interest in Sudan, West Africa, and in his home country, Guinea. Byro is a Swiss citizen and fluent in French and English. I myself was born in Tanzania, East Africa, so I know a lot about the traditional African concepts and philosophy, which is sometimes called Ubuntuism, which is very much a spiritual relationship, not only with nature, with every form of diversity. So I think it's a very interesting perspective as well. So, Byro.
Thank you, my friend. I would like to congratulate you for your constant promotion of the agenda for the adoption of Universal Declaration on Diversity. And I expressed my gratitude to our friend, Professor Nicola, for his presence and support and commitment to religious and ethnic minorities around the world. In his introduction, he spoke of a world in trouble. I can say that world in trauma, in crossroad. I think how many state members are present here today. We discuss important issue. I thank Indian delegation, who is a big democracy around the world, and pluralistic a country, Chinese as well. Thank you for China delegation, and I hope you can help us to promote this agenda, and Eritrea as well. So, friends and colleagues, different from you, my brother, far from leaving you, I increase you. We can all remind ourselves, but we most important thing is to share in order to give meaning to our life and our existence. Protecting diversity in the world that is changing and transforming rapidly with the acceleration of technological and development and the emergence of artificial intelligence is more essential than ever. It is time to take advantage of this opportunity to take stock of what we have achieved over to the centuries with a view to rebuilding a just society based on shared and universal recognized values. Dear friends and colleagues, in Ubuntu philosophy, dignity is a shared value. Love is a shared value. Peace is a shared value. Justice is a shared value. And culture is a common to all people. To conclude, I think of Madiba Nelson Mandela, who said, "No one hates another person because of the color of his skin, or his past, or his religion. People learn to hate, and if we can teach them to hate, we can teach them to love." I thank you.
Thank you very much, Aro. And we've heard four views, perspectives. They bring in different perspectives, but saying the same thing. We would open the floor to questions, or even a discussion. So please, is there anything anybody wants to ask? Okay. Well, it seems they've been very convincing that nobody seems to have a question. But I think what Professor Leverett said at the beginning is quite important. Different civilizations have evolved differently in dealing with diversity in some ways. We are mostly at the UN. It was set up mostly by the Western civilization, and most of the treaties and most of the conventions are based on this adversarial system where a group is going to campaign for its rights to be treated equally. And it has worked. It has worked very well in many countries. But we have at least two different civilizations here represented through countries. In South Asia, an Indian civilization, there is a very amazing statement in the Rig Veda that there is one truth, but there are many ways to it. Yeah? And it has been one of the founding principles of civilizations in South Asia, where you accept rather than just tolerate. And you accept the other because you think you may be right, but you may not always, you don't always know that you're absolutely right. The other person could be right as well. And they have their own approach to reaching the truth. And so I think in that subcontinent, in that region, it can boast that minorities have coexisted for a long time. The Zoroastrians have been there for 2,000 years at least. There have been Jewish communities within India who've never felt persecution. There have been Christians there who've been living since the time of early Christianity. People may not know this. They didn't come with their colonialism. Similarly, we have Chinese civilization, which is conceptual foundation is about harmony between different communities, harmony with minorities as well, and things like that. It's not adversarial. And I think this is what in any universal declaration, we need to incorporate the very different civilizations and how they approach diversity so that diversity can be seen from many angles. So I don't know if there's any comments on this, Professor Leverett.
I heard many very relevant and interesting things. One point that I did not develop, but which seems very important to me, is how to articulate equality, because it's an important value, and diversity. And this is a very classical topic for minority rights, because basically equality is somehow the other side of the principle of non-discrimination. People have to be treated equally. Well, actually, people in the same situation have to be treated equally. But equality also implies, and it is very often overlooked, that people in different situations will be discriminated if they are treated equally. Actually, you have to take into consideration the specific situation, which is different from the neighbor, and treat them accordingly to their specific situation. So equality can perfectly be articulated with equality. And I think there are many other principles. Again, I was talking about universality and diversity, universality and equality. So we should have some sort, naturally it's my way of thinking, and I'm fully open to have other perspective on how to do it, but I would see it as some sort of a matrix with different principle, value that we need to articulate. Somehow, diversity is one of these, a very important one, but not a superior or dominant one. It's one that needs to be better acknowledged, taken into account, and it has consequences on our concept of universality, on our concept of equality, and all these concepts, and the other way around. And I guess this is how we can have a positive outcome from this process on working on recognition and actually even promotion of diversity. As was said, it is really first, yes, a condition of reality. There is a lot of diversity. And again, the way reality is portrayed by science is a construct. I mean, science is supposed to give an objective version, but this is one understanding of objectivity and how to view things. There are others. And again, this is precisely the whole thing about diversity. How can we accept and combine this different understanding, this different vision that may give different results, but then all need to be treated equally and all contribute to this universal approach. So it makes things more complex, but it happens that thanks to technological development, we have this capacity nowadays, thanks to computing power, to treat hugely complex things that still 30 years ago was impossible. We had to have simple model and work on the model and then try to extrapolate to reality. We don't need that anymore. But then, and I think that's another reason, and you raised this point about the development of technology and artificial intelligence and so on, there is a great danger towards diversity because it's only a few algorithms, which we usually don't know. And even if we know, we're not sure we know the assumption below, which may lead to single or dominant solution, which would be a great loss of diversity. So I think it's also one of, I'm not sure we can, let's say, instill diversity within algorithm, and it's not my point, but precisely human beings, their way of thinking, their way of understanding the world is diverse. And this is a huge difference, and I would say relevance of human thinking against this artificial intelligence, which is not so intelligent anyway. I mean, we know, as far as we know, how it processes. So far, it's not intelligent at all. It produces fantastic results, but not very intelligent. But then again, I'm not sure we should fight to have diversity within algorithm, but I'm sure we should insist that diversity is a value and it is best defended by human thinking, human figuration of the world, than through this artificial intelligence. So that's another reason, I think, to push now for this Universal Declaration on Diversity.
Any comment? Yeah.
I would like to ask you what could be the next steps for the declaration on diversity.
Well, the next steps would be, I mean, we are on, we feel very fortunate and feel very encouraged that the Special Rapporteur on Minorities is agreeing with the principle, and we have to try and get other NGOs together who think that there is an opportunity, a vacuum for a declaration of diversity. Because what we also say is, for instance, I was in Durban, 2001, when the Durban Declaration and Plan of Action was enacted, and 24 years later, we still have a lot of issues on racism. The laws are there, the intentions are there, but what isn't changed is the attitudes of the people. By changing the attitudes of the people, we complement the treaties which are already in place at the UN. So there's a treaty on everything. There's a convention against discrimination against women. There's on racial equality and like a convention against discrimination on the basis of race and things like that. There is, as Professor Leverett said, the Declaration on Cultural Diversity as well. But we are here in 2025 and the problems are still there. And unless you change the minds of people, there are some countries who've been very successful when states have taken positive steps to make diversity acceptable and comfortable and move away from policies of populism. Democracy, for all its strength, also has the weakness in that politicians can exploit populism and target minorities to try and garner the vote, the majority. And how do you change all these sort of things? If states commit themselves to a declaration, then they will take steps and they can learn from each other. So not every state has to do the same thing that another state is doing. So the steps are, obviously, we will have a few more meetings, not necessarily at the Human Rights Council, but let's say at the University of Geneva and in our offices, and bring other NGOs along. And countries, we try and persuade some countries, and in the end, at the UN, everything happens when states take up. That's our very simple plan. By brainstorming and try and create a framework of declaration, and hopefully within the next few years we will start getting somewhere. Yep.
My name is Alfred Gondo. I work with Interface International. My question is to Professor Nicolas Leverett. I want to, for my understanding, I want to know which criteria to become a minority in a country. That's one. And secondly, did you have a plan for a symposium of all the minority in the world? Just, thank you.
To answer your second question, even if I have the plan, I don't have the means. And I regret, but I'm considering in my next report to the General Assembly, because many things are changing now in the UN human rights architecture, and minorities have definitely not been at the center of it. And so maybe I will try to make a call to have a world conference, a world summit on minorities. But it's too narrow, minorities. We have to find a way to precisely bring this issue of diversity. Now, how do you qualify or not as a minority in a country is a very complex question. There's only one criteria. If you're more than half, you cannot be a minority. Doesn't mean you cannot be discriminated, unfortunately, but to be a minority, you have to be less than half. The rest, there are no clear criteria. But clearly, as far as my mandate is concerned, it's only discriminated minority that I'm trying to protect. There are minorities which are privileged. Well, good for them. I mean, I'm not against them, but I'm not working for them. But the formal criteria, there is none in international law. Some countries have some definition, but even this definition will not necessarily be compelling for my mandate. It's possible that there are groups which are not defined as minority, which are minorities being discriminated. So there is no clear-cut criteria. We need to figure out, and again, it's not necessarily a single kind of legal criteria or boxes, as was said by my neighbor. Everything is evolving, and we have to look for ways to properly deal with minority issues. Again, my mandate is about the issues that minority have, not about the definition, but about the rights. It's the issues, and we have to deal with the issues.
I want to please the administrators here, so we can leave 1 minute before their dead time. I hope. Thank you very much for coming and listening to us, and hope for listening. To the speakers.
Yeah, sure. You also can find me at the university, quite public.
Yes.
Take a picture.
Yes, sir.